we should have covered our faces so we could have robbed more banks. She's sounding pretty moral, and he's sounding like a total criminal. So on the one hand, she's sounding pretty moral, and he's sounding very sociopathic. On another level, they're both being pretty selfish, because she's saying, if we'd done it differently, I could get what I want. And he's also saying, if we'd done it differently, I could get what I want. They're both what we call sociopaths. All I can think about is what I want. I'm still going to take your dollar. I don't care what you need. I don't care if it's your last dollar and it means you can't buy food when you leave here. You're going to starve to death. I'm going to take your 75 cents and you're going to starve to death. Because I don't care about anybody but me. That's the definition of a sociopath. And that pretty much describes most of the people who are surprised how they get. I'm trying to turn that around.
She was sort of like that until she had a boyfriend and then she stopped being like that.
Love is about the only thing that changes it. And I will tell you, every small child is a sociopath.
All they care about
Middle
is
schoolers know everything.
You ask a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, you know, how do you know your mommy loves you, or why do you love your mommy? And you'll get a list of what mommy does for me. I love my mommy because she, you know, buys me new clothes and she curls my hair and she takes me to a restaurant and she does this and this and this and she buys me a dog. You know, it's all about me. But we're supposed to give that up at some point. We get over it. They don't seem to. I had a friend who we were doing a class together, and I think it was her idea. We just asked them to define compassion. Somebody define the word compassion. What's compassion? I don't know, because you looked at me, I thought, oh, shit. If you had to define compassion, throw out a definition and we'll see if we can improve on that.
Having a heart.
Having a heart, that's a really good start. What else would we say about compassion? Caring about someone or something else. Can we say even more?
sympathy.
Sympathy, that's good. Let's throw one more thing out there. If you have 75 cents and it's all you have, and you really would be better off with $1, he's got 75 cents. It'd be nice if everybody had $1, and you've got $1.25, and you know that he's only got 75 cents, and everybody ought to have $1. What would you do? Yeah, you might give him that quarter. Yeah. That would be compassion. You're so kind. If you want to give me the quarter, I'll pass it on to him later. So my friend, we were doing this class, and my friend asked the guys in our group in the prison to define compassion. There was this total agonized silence, and they all kind of looked up and they looked down, you know, how you doing? Nobody knows the answer. And finally, one brave soul said, "It means the other guy has as much right to live as I do." And that's the best they can do. Because they can't get victim empathy. They don't get it. It means the other guy has a right to live. That's it. I don't care if he's got clothes. I don't care if somebody just stole his last 75 cents. And that's the part that's very, very hard to do. That's what you try to do in prison ministry. It's tricky. Totally tricky. Now I'm going to shut up for a while. I've got some ideas about other things that we're going to talk about, but I'll see if we've got some questions and comments.
I really want to know what you do when you're in there. How do you start the conversation? How much of it is spiritual or religious versus just talking about morals and things like that? How do you even start when you're in there with your groups?
Well, we have a lot of groups. I do a lot of movies. One of my groups is, they're all men, by the way. It's a men's prison. We have a knitting group. Yeah, we knit. How many of you knit? How many of you guys knit?
How many knit?
How many women knit? How many of you guys knit?
Sit and knit club that right now.
At school?
Yeah.
There you are.
Yep.
The what?
Well, if you want to practice, see, then you'd be ready to go to prison because you already know how.
Ah, thanks.
Yes,
seen any swag, you might be headed that way.
Does anyone actually ever call you that?
I do.
Well, we know. Now we know. Now we know the truth. Yeah, the knitting group, there's 2 or 3 things that go on in the knitting group, and there's like 20 men in it. For one thing, it's extremely peaceful. It's very quiet compared to the noise and the hecticness that's in the prison. And they kind of like that. And we knit hats and scarves, and we give them away. They go, a bunch of them went to an orphanage in Peru last summer, and then in the winter we sent them to Riley Hospital, or sometimes to homeless shelters. So it's a piece of victim empathy that we're trying to develop because we're knitting them for unfortunate people, for cancer patients and homeless people. So we're working on sharing with people who are less fortunate than the people in prison. But we also watch movies. And one of the things they don't realize is I let them suggest movies, and I don't order all the movies they suggest, but I order as many of the movies they suggest as I can, but I also put in movies that I want them to watch. And so most of the movies have an edge to them about either victim empathy or at least looking past the externals to the real core of the person. So in terms of looking past externals to the core of the person, we watched Avatar, because there's that emphasis on ICU and seeing the real person. But of course there's a huge component of having empathy for people who are being injured in there. We watched movies like Hotel Rwanda. You seen that? Very sad. There was total silence when we finished that movie. No.
We were just talking about that this morning in the car.
Yeah, Jake was watching Leonardo DiCaprio this morning. It's an awesome movie. It's about the diamond smuggling industry in Africa along with child soldiers.
Oh, that sounds good.
It has Leonardo DiCaprio in it.
Tell me the name of that one again.
Blood Diamond.
In history class, we watched a short video of where they actually interviewed the guy who Hotel Rwanda was based off of.
Hotel Rwanda?
I forget the name of the video, but it was all in subtitles. Of course, he didn't speak English like he did in the movie.
Yeah, in the movie he's
Everybody speaks English in movies.
Yeah.
Even aliens.
Yeah. Of course, they can read our minds and just suck up our language. I have another class it's a history class, and we watch. It's a 10-week class. We watch a series of movies from the History Channel. They're called 10 Events That Unexpectedly Changed America, and we just finished the 1-hour segment on the Battle of Antietam. I don't know if you know anything about Antietam, but more people died in one day at Antietam than in, the entire Vietnam conflict or in any battle that we've ever had. But, I mean, one man he had tears running down his face during that movie, and I thought, okay, victim empathy. Yes. He was miserable, but it's victim empathy. Anything. Yes. Come to Donna's class and be miserable. But that's the goal. Let me tell you about a man named Sean. When I knew Sean...
Sorry, we had a question. What was your question, Gregory? What was Antietam?
What was Antietam?
Antietam was a battle during the Civil War.
Oh,
yeah. It was a turning point in the Civil War. The battle itself was a draw, and the Civil War came in the middle of the Civil War. It was 2 years into the Civil War, and there were 2 more years after it. But it was close enough to a victory that it gave Abraham Lincoln the impetus that he needed to announce the Emancipation Proclamation. And it also started the ball rolling so that he could later give the Gettysburg Address. So it was pivotal in terms of the effect it had on the nation as a whole, and then also on the future course of the war. So there are a lot of reasons why it was an important battle, but for our our purposes in the prison, what it did was help a couple people finally find someone besides themselves to feel sorry for. Because that's the piece they've got to do before they ever stop going back to prison. Sean is somebody I want to tell you about, because Sean, I had nothing to do with changing Sean. I don't change anybody's life. Sean, God changes people's lives, but Sean changed his own life. God changed Sean's life, but it all happened before I knew him. He just told me about it when I met him. Sean was 24 when I met him, and he's been out of prison for maybe 8 years now. But between the time he was 12 and the time he was 24, Sean had been out of prison for a total of 2 years. Total, added up to 2 years. Because he'd gone to prison to boys' school when he was 12 and been out of prison. He'd been in prison about 3 times between the time he was 12 and the time he was 24. And the times he'd been out just added up to almost 2 years. Because every time he was out, he did something like that. When he left prison at the age of 24, he had nowhere to go. His mother was in prison, his father was in prison, his stepfather was in prison, and his grandmother was in prison. And he'd been in prison so much that he really never learned to do anything. I mean, he could only get jobs in fast food restaurants. And I mean, at one point, he was working in 2 fast food restaurants that were literally across the parking lot from each other. Because you don't make a lot of money working in fast food restaurants. I mean, you have to earn a living wage, you have to work in several of them. But he stayed out of prison. But what he said one day was, when you first go to prison, you feel sorry for yourself. But if you stay with that feeling, instead of medicating it, with alcohol or drugs or cigarettes, but if you stay with that feeling, you realize that the person you hurt is in a kind of prison too. And when you realize that, you don't want to hurt any more people. And then you know you'll never go back to prison. And as soon as he said that, it was obvious that he would never go back to prison. And he never has. And I don't think he ever will. Because he figured out that he didn't want to hurt any more people. That's a huge step to go from not feeling sorry for yourself to not feeling sorry for other people. And none of the programs, as far as I know, none of the programs that we did made that transition. He made it himself. But if you walk with somebody and hold their hand and give them support, you can help. And that's pretty much what we try to do. So, yeah, I'll tell you about some of the programs I do. I do a program on Monday afternoons. It's called Houses of Healing. And that program tries to look at who our core self is and how we set up false personalities. Starting as a little kid, we set up false personalities to try and basically keep people off our backs. And then we have those false personalities so long that we think they're really us.
You think everyone has that?
Well, we all have it, but if we're lucky, we know we're doing it. We go, okay, I think I'm going to be more assertive right now, or I think I'm going to be quieter right now, or I'm going to be more polite, or I'm going to be funny right now. We turn it on, but we know we're turning it on, and that it's something we're doing for a while because it's going to work.
Do any of you think you have kind of a different side of your personality that shows when you're at school or with your parents, for example, versus when you're just with your friends? Yeah?
Yeah, like, I don't get as mad at school and stuff.
You don't get as mad at school?
Yeah.
So you can kind of let that hang out when you're, where do you allow yourself? At home.
I use different language with my friends and teachers or my parents.
Your what?
I use different language.
Use different language, yep. Yeah. I still do.
It
even
drastically
with my parents. I'm more careful than I say.
I try not to.
Some of the teachers are really nice about, like, if you let something slip, they just.
Yeah.